Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things LEGO. Hit the link below to find a store near you. Hey everyone, Joshua Hanlon here at Bricks Cascade in Portland, Oregon, and today we're taking a look at this incredible build. This is at the edge of the woods, and I've got both of the builders here with me. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, then we'll take a look at this.
Hi, I'm Kat Harmon.
And I'm Sam Harmon.
Awesome, and we've featured some of the work that you guys have done individually on your own in past years, really amazing stuff, but this year you decided to collaborate on this, so give us kind of an overview of what we're looking at here.
So, LEGO makes all these amazing CMFs. And we've, for a long time, loved this beautiful little Acorn Boy CMF. And so we were struggling after the last show. What do you want to build? We don't know. And we just said, let's find a home for this beautiful little figure. Where would this person live? So
once we started, we actually noticed that the new CMF series came out with Mushroom Girl.
About halfway through.
And that
changed everything because it was such a, like LEGO being serendipitous to us for what we needed to make this amazing, make things good.
Yeah, we were inspired by like Northern Europe. They have wonderful fairy houses, and like the whole point is you feed the fairies and you make a place for them. And we were thinking, Acorn Boy, where does he live? What does he do for fun? Who does he hang out with? And so we wanted to build a little world that we'd love to live in, and this is that world.
And there's always that goal of building big, beautiful trees out of LEGO, and how can you do that? So we started with the tree, knew that there'd be mushrooms on the ground, and figured we'd figure out the rest later. And so we just started building up and building a little world in that tree and having fights about what should go in there or how big the opening should be, and playing with collaboration for the first time, trying to figure that part out.
So once we had an idea of how we were going to build the structure, so it really started with the cylinder, a 20-sided cylinder that had 6x12 dark brown plates vertically, and they were going to be 6 plates high. So once we had that structure, we actually did some drawings of the north, south, east, and west sort of elevations to give us a feeling for where we wanted to put the different features.
A grid so that as we built up, we would not forget to put the window where it should be, or not put a window where we think a house might be in the long term. So even though we didn't have a full plan, it gave us enough that we could improvise as we built, but still not make big mistakes.
Yeah, we knew we wanted roots, and to make roots in LEGO is really challenging because the text, LEGO wants to be on grid. And if you want to get off grid, you got to be pretty intentional. And so we did a lot of network and formed a lot of texture and space for that, those spaces to get off grid.
Because we wanted to make the studs of the tree be the texture that really spoke to the bark. And they had that, at least a prototype of that. That's how we were going to describe a tree, the language of the tree. We knew that the roots had to be studs out. We couldn't switch to slopes or plates or all these other things. So we had to go to that sort of gimmicky style of using the net with the studs between them to allow us to have a texture that could keep those studs out and keep that feeling of the tree's bark alive as it goes all the way down to the earth.
Absolutely, but the thing that makes this so incredible is you talked about kind of planning for the outside and where these outside buildings would be, but then you've got that whole interior in the tree as well. So how do you kind of keep both of those ideas in mind, the fact that you've got a whole kind of city inside and then all of the mushroom buildings on the outside?
Well, I think just like LEGO, when you see a LEGO set, they like to have enough beds for everybody, and it was just obvious with how many figures we were going to have that we needed to show both the interior life and the exterior life. Like there was some at least lip service to providing them all with places to be. I think that was important.
And one would love to have the whole tree be openable, and you could see all those different places, but knowing that there was just going to be this big, heavy castle at the top meant that we had to have a structure that could support this thing and support it while it was spinning. Because we did learn from that big, tall bathhouse I built last year, we want to be able to see all the sides. We had all this detail on the back sides of that build that we couldn't see, so this would allow us to have that.
I don't know if Sam told you last year, but we could not fit Sam's build in our car last year. So we actually had to borrow a van to get it here. And so this year we planned and we actually measured the back of our car and decided exactly how tall and how wide this could be and still fit.
So originally there were ideas that got left on the cutting room floor because you'd want, if you had just even another 4 inches of space around this circle, the depth of the mushroom village could be bigger. You could start integrating squirrels and snails and birds that are interacting with them. But when you get this tight, you have to be like, okay, this is all I can do. So we had to leave all this stuff on the floor.
But you still packed in so much down here, so we can maybe take a closer look at some of what you have on this ground floor right now. What are some of these kind of houses and buildings?
Yeah, so
Well,
mushroom crowd.
We have a grand entrance built off a rock that sort of lodged in the roots, and that if you look through that little opening, it goes all the way through into the courtyard that you see from the other side.
Yeah, and I really want to draw attention to, like, these houses were really a combined effort. And if you look underneath, there's actually gills on this large mushroom house. And this house was really, I think, the most collaborative effort of maybe anything that we did in this build. Sam fought with the shell for 3 days and then handed it over to me. And he's like, you want a chimney? You put a chimney on this thing. And so I was much more in charge of like the interior spaces and like building the little houses and minifigure stories and all of that good stuff.
But there are a lot of fun scenes. There's a scene here where there's carrots, the size of carrots that we'd pull out of the ground, and they're trying to pull this big carrot out of the ground because inside the building there's a cafe.
You should wait a minute until it comes around again before you say that.
They're using it. We can talk about that.
There's a chef who actually is slicing up carrot slices, and you'll see different places in the build where those carrot slices are being eaten, because a carrot slice is like a whole meal for one of those Acorn people.
There's a couple people reading a book together. There's the villages and people walking in and out doing their things.
The band.
Here we have a group who have just returned from the forest collecting forest berries.
Now, the band up here on the side of the tree.
Yeah, there's the band at the side of the tree. There's always music playing, right? Maybe they're playing for these mushrooms. I don't know.
This guy is like flying here along the side.
Yeah, we have a hang glider. We feel like the fairies felt bad that that nobody else can fly, and so they helped everybody else learn to fly via hang gliders.
Well, and I think that brings us to like the layout of this, and we were really thinking about the mushroom species because we wanted this to have a natural feel to it, even though it's obviously fantasy. So how do natural plants, they kind of cluster, not on grid, but you'll generally find members of the same species in little sort of clumps together. And the same thing with mushrooms. And so when we designed the shell mushrooms, they have sort of clusters along the tree. And then there's these other mushrooms that are dinosaur tails with radars that are growing out from the side of the tree. And then there are the amanitas that are all along the forest floor. And so we
had a day where it was one of the most fun days of the build. We just built mushrooms like crazy, and we had every variety of mushroom you can imagine, but we had to narrow down to that vision of what's going to make the build work, what's going to feel right. And we actually got down to just the two types, the amanita and these shelf mushrooms, that the people can kind of hop along and use ladders to get up. It was only at the very end that we added those beautiful little dark orange and tan mushrooms on the side, because that side needed something, and it was just a little more. And so we had that one little thing, but it was hard to leave the lion's manes and all the beautiful weird mushrooms on the cutting room floor.
I do love, though, how you've made the paths and the different kind of platforms here with those mushrooms and the leaves, and so it really gives kind of a route for the different characters to travel up the side of the tree.
Travel up to this tea room observatory, which I want to go to a tea room observatory. That's the thing I want to do.
I have to say, this build is really about what we like and what we want our world to look like, I think.
As with every build, there's a library in it. There's always going to be a library in it.
Yeah.
Which is so much fun that you really want to populate this world, and I think you can kind of see that care and love and creativity that then you put in that. So we've talked a lot about kind of the bottom half, but of course you've got this tower, which is just like so eye-catching because of the colors. So where did you kind of start, and how did you decide, especially on kind of the color scheme here with the tower?
So I'll take that. So Sam and I independently came up with a color scheme that we really liked, and Sam came to me and he's like, I have this color scheme. I don't think you're going to like it for the tower. And I'm like, that is exactly what I want and what I was thinking we should do.
It's a little weird putting that yellowish green with the light aqua, and it was hard to believe in it, but the prototype worked and it felt right, and it felt like it would read as Fairy Castle, but still have sort of the earthiness that these sort of very earthy forest fairies would have. Ended up being crucial to that, though, was surrounding everything in white. Surrounding everything in white contained all that weirdness and allowed it to exist. But we also have this trans pink element, studs in there, which allows when, especially in night viewing, the light to shine through and for there to be just a little hint of magic.
The happy accident of that particular surfacing that Sam did is that during lights out last night, this thing looked magical, and it transcended what I thought it would be, and I was very taken by how it looked. It was really amazing.
So originally we were thinking a fairy house like the European traditions. We weren't going to build a castle that was this big. And we got to the point, in the tree we have the castle go down into the tree, because we didn't want it to feel like it was a castle on a stump. We wanted to feel like it was almost like the tree was a nurse log for a building. We got to this point and we had figured the color scheme out, but we didn't know what we were going to build. I'd never built a castle. I didn't know what this castle was going to look like. And we went towards Castle 1 because there's a theme here that's castle, and we needed a place to put this. But also because once they released that mushroom girl, we thought, well, the mushroom people are living in the mushroom houses, and the acorn people are clearly living in the tree. So we needed some cool fairy to live up here in the castle. And once we thought of that, the fairy castle, it started to make sense, and we just started building. And then we just incorporate fun elements like all the trans pink and the stained glass windows and the sort of living branch railings.
Most importantly, the roofs. The roofs.
What are some of these different tops here?
The living roof.
Yeah, so the sunflower, Sam can actually take it off when it comes back around, and you can hold it, and it's complete.
I think the first thing we knew is, actually before we started building, there was two things I wanted to build. And one was I wanted to make sure there was a pine cone in the build, and I wanted to make sure there was a fern in the build. We can get back to the fern. But the pine cone, we were struggling to place because of that narrow skirt on it. And we realized it's the perfect tower roof. So it ended up being the tower roof. Likewise, if you see here, the sunflower can come off and I can show it to the kid that it's a real sunflower, and you can let them touch it and feel it. That fairy house tradition, they have a tradition of the roofs are made with big flower petals or big leaves molded onto them, or strings of flowers. So we just wanted to emulate that tradition and bring the sort of the botanical trend that Lego's in right now, and bring it up and give it a use, give it a reason to build these cool flowers in a context that's different.
So I just wanted to say that the window design was one that was really quite a collaboration. Sam had prototyped and initially had intended that we would have a different window style for every window on the tree. And when I came home and saw all of the different windows, I pointed at this one and I said, "This is the one, Sam. This is the one." And we ended up bringing that window surround design all the way through the build, and I think it gives it a cohesion. It adds to that nature that feels like the fairies looked at the tree and said, "Oh, this is how windows are supposed to be. We'll magic these into existence for ourselves, but we'll put pink sparkly on them because they need to be pink and sparkly."
And the window story brings up another weird little point, which is that everywhere you go, you see little sprouts of plants. This is a world that all the plants are actually human-sized, right? They're sized for you and me. This tree is the size you come across in the forest. The mushrooms, this dandelion here, they're all things you come across in the forest around that size. But we kind of see these creatures as sort of guardians of young forest life. And so in all the windowsills and in backpacks all over this thing, you'll see backpacks full of people with flowers in them. They're carrying them around, seedlings. They're carrying them around to plant them in places and spread life to the places they think they should be.
Yeah, so every minifig has different faces. The whole point was these are not carbon copies of the same thing. That would have been creepy. Like, I definitely took them all apart. I gave them all each their own little personality and style, and that was the goal, to have it be a diverse place of.
Yesterday you said one of the little girls pointed at the mushroom girl and said, "Oh, I have that," and then they looked up at the beard and was like, "There's one of the mushroom girls, we have a beard on," and they're like, "Oh," which was fun, so great.
One of my favorite details at the top here is this series of kind of flowers that you've done, which is just so fantastic, the way that kind of is all weaved together up there.
I think Sam's kind of speechless. Yeah, this was a bit of a collaborative in terms of just how are we going to fill in all of the gaps between the flowers, and having the buds, the green buds in there, I think really enriches that experience. And I think it's so fun to design a cloth out of Lego. And I think Sam's really interested in that, seeing that light leak. I think in the future you'll see things from us where it's very intentional. Transparency is very intentional. Layering is very intentional with Lego.
But the flowers are trying to figure out what to say, which is why I went quiet there for a second. It's just another example of, I love where Lego's going, where we're celebrating nature more, where we're building sets about the Kingfisher set or all these beautiful botanical sets. And again, it's how do you put these things in a context that's fun. So we did build like a plain roof underneath them so that you wouldn't find holes or problems visually, but a color that would almost read as like a neutral green, so that those flowers could just sort of sit on the top and act like a roof.
So how tall is this build from the table to the top of the stem there?
It's shorter than me.
It's a little over 5 feet.
Okay.
It's a foot and a half shorter than last year's bathhouse.
Still very impressive. And I love, as you guys have been talking back and forth here, kind of the collaborative process that you've been explaining. So I know you said this is the first time that you've worked on something kind of so closely together. What did you learn, and have you kind of established more of a system going forward as you work on builds?
Well, we've always had a language of Lego. As you can imagine, when you sort your Lego collection, you have your own language with your people who are using that same space, and you sort of talk about Lego in specific ways. So I feel like...
And we've always built together and helped each other and collaborated with, like, at least to the level of like, what do you think I should do here, and help them. That, and I think as of a couple days ago, we were thinking this might be it, but not for us, for the collaborating.
It's good to hear.
We've been married over 25 years, and we're happy as can be. We promise. Now you got me blushing.
No, but I mean, collaboration is always difficult, and I think we got to a few points with some of these designs, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is hard when you have to have everything approved by a second person. I remember when we were doing the interior pink area, and that we were tying together some of those large leaves to make a structure in there. We had 3 or 4 different designs that we liked, and
different opinions about where it should go.
we were trying to decide which one we were going to use, and that whole process, it just adds to the process. But I think the product is really good.
In the end, I think we have realized that we each have our own strengths, and if the build requires both those strengths, we should be working together. It's fun. Why not? And if not, then it's okay not to.
Now, like I mentioned, we covered some of your fantastic builds last year, and you've got this year. Do you post your work online? If people want to see more from you, where can they follow you online?
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram, K__Harmon. Sam is
Also on Instagram at Dark Samish Gray. Dark Samish Gray.
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome.
So we haven't talked about parts usage.
Yeah, go for it. Go ahead. Yes, absolutely. What do you want to point out?
These right here are life preservers.
Oh, very nice.
And they make very nice, and they're still very inexpensive on Bricklink if anyone wants to buy them. And
The
these,
very first thing I wanted to build, I mentioned earlier, was I knew I wanted this to be a fern. And I think you thought I was crazy.
yes.
And I prototyped a bunch of things, but the crocodile tail fern ended up being the thing that really felt like fronds.
Absolutely. There's also some Scala perfume bottles as buds for flowers.
Because things flower at different rates, you don't often get to show that in Lego. It's always like, all the flowers bloomed at once. So to use that little Scala as like a half bud.
Yeah.
Scala, one of those great, just kind of very niche Lego themes, but some really unique parts that came out of that.
Yeah. And some of these have DNA and other botanical sets in Jonas Cram flowers and berries and lots of that sort of wonderful stuff. I mean, the internet is such a amazing place of greatness to use for your own builds.
Absolutely. Well, great work here. There is just so much to take in, and it's been really fun also to see the public come up and just how much time they spend looking at the build as it rotates around and the details that they appreciate. So I always love seeing the work that both of you do here, and I can't wait to see more from you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.